So Mark wrote this gospel. So, as the naked man fleeing during Jesus' arrest, and as the rich young ruler asking Jesus what he needs to do, and Jesus says, give up everything. And so this guy does, all the way down to running around naked, which is funny. And Jesus says to Peter, you'll deny me 3 times before the morning. Yeah, the cockroach, before the morning. Like right at dawn, right before dawn, you'll deny me 3 times. And I'm thinking, what a perfect setup for Peter and Mark, for Peter to edit Mark's document, which has all this extra stuff in it, because he's just like, wow, this is what I heard when I was far away, and then I came closer, because it's my opinion that Mark, was a Jew who was also a Roman soldier, and I think an officer at that, and a scout. Hence, he had the ability to supersede normal sergeants and less. He had the ability to supersede that because he was a scout. But that was the only way that he could attain his officership as being non-Roman. I could be wrong. So anyway, he's out fighting with Titus. No, this is before, well, never mind. You can look that up yourself. And in Germany and whatnot. So he's out fighting with Titus. And he's getting, he's a scout, or a courier maybe. Maybe he's like positioned himself to be a courier because he's a... And so he's getting these missives about the Jesus phenomenon. This chit-chat betwixt the soldiers. And of course, he's got the whole way to read them, because he also probably, as an officer, has the ability to censor stuff. And so during this time, he is like, why do I have to censor the Jesus stuff? Because they tell him from on high. They're like, High Command says censor the Jesus stuff. Because we don't want you Jews to revolt. And there's all these wild stories about who Jesus is. And that's how Luke writes it down. I'm not dissing Luke. So there's this Q document that Mark has from scraps, because he has to, take it apart and burn them and not allow those to be in the letters. Because that's the very beginning of media, is controlling what people can read. And for months at a time. So you have all the conjecture you want about what's missing in there. It could be just, you're a good soldier, and every now and then they take out a section just so that you're not ostracized by the other one. Everyone's could be like, oh, that guy's perfect, he gets the whole letter. Everybody else has all these holy letters. So he's got all the holy clippings, and he's burned them dutifully, but he has to read them to find them. And so he starts getting convinced. So he starts making a scrapbook totally crazy on it, totally crazy. Goes so far as to confront Jesus when he gets back from his missions, and so he's obviously well off, and hunts Jesus down, and then divests himself of his riches, and runs around naked, and then Jesus dies. Talking about like a little sense of like needing closure on that one, and then Jesus rises from the dead. And he's an eyewitness. Like, the disciples were pretty on target, But I bet you Mark was ecstatic. She's like, I didn't just hear about it from a whole bunch of people. I'm a scout. All of a sudden he's all like, I was a courier, and I repented of being a courier, and now I'm a scout again. And I am scouting into enemy territory, which is my own country. Have I turned over to the Romans, or have I turned over to Jesus? Like, Yeshua, like, what's happening here? I love that point of angst and anguish when you don't know which side you're fighting for. But the one side that you are rooting for is one of two possible outcomes. And so that's where you place your hope. And so Peter edits Mark's savings of the scraps. And then shows them to Matthew. Matthew has it in Hebrew, in tight formation of money. Mark has it militarily, or situationally, I should say. Luke comes along. Luke's a total pure convert. He's trying to get down into the grips of it, but he's Greek. And so he looks at all the different influences that could be upon it. And then Paul has Mark meet up with Luke. Mark is a Roman soldier. And Peter didn't talk about the birth of Jesus very much. Do you hear me? And so Mark is definitely gonna go with what Luke heard. And he won't know any better. And neither will Paul. Paul isn't even born yet. Paul doesn't even know anything about it. Except for, after Jesus came in as some 30-year-old upstart to Paul's youngsterness. That guy sure causes my leaders a bunch of problems. And then John holds it precious in his heart. Holds the whole thing precious in his heart so hard that he holds on for Mary. Mary was prophesied that it would pierce her like a sword, And then John is like, here's your mother, son, and son, here's your mother. From Jesus on the cross, which is where salvation comes from. And John holds on to it for another 60, 70 years. You know, he was boiled alive. Did you know that? John was boiled alive and lived. Then they stuck him on the Isle of Patmos. Goodness gracious. Which was either desolate or was a marvel of Roman engineering.